So before I start the video, I just have to make a quick correction to the last video. It wasn't Metal Slug 2 I saw playing on the Neo Geo cabinet, it was Metal Slug 3. Just want to fix that mistake as I recently purchased the older games and after playing through them, and am now able to correct myself, Metal Slug's 2 opening is set in the desert, and Metal Slug 3 is set on the weird beach. Confusion to the max, but now that that is fixed, let's get on to the review. Metal Slug 5, for me at least, is the weakest entry in the Metal Slug series. This is by no means me saying this is a bad game, as it's a really darn good game, if not a bit too short. After Metal Slug 4 was directed by Mega Enterprise in 2002, Metal Slug 5 is back in the hands of a newly reformed SNK under the name of SNK Playmore. Metal Slug 5 has new backgrounds, sprites, and animation, unlike Metal Slug 4, which reused a lot of older assets from the previous games. Metal Slug 5 was released in November of 2003 as one of the last games to be made for the Neo Geo system. The version I'll be talking about is the PS2 release of Metal Slug 4 and 5. It was released on May 25th, 2005 for PlayStation 2 and the original Xbox. The Xbox version is sadly not backwards compatible. Metal Slug 5's story takes place before the events of Metal Slug 7, with Marco and Tarma, members of the special task force by the name of Peregrine Falcon, teaming up with Ari and Fio, members of a joint op team called Sparrow. They are all on the tail of an occultic terrorist group by the name of the Pultviamic Army, who have stolen top secret files on Project Metal Slug. Our heroes will fight their way through cultists, spec ops, and plenty of other interesting and well-animated cannon fodder over 5 globe-trotting levels, facing off against what is supposed to be bigger and badder bosses. This time it isn't General Morden's group of rebel forces you will be fighting against, which is a first for the series. Actually, there is a lot of firsts for the series, such as in-game cutscenes, being only one I could count, only one goofy character morph, which is Fat Mode, no medal system, and plenty of other little surprising changes, most of which are not all that great. Naughty and Trevor are gone from the previous game, which is disappointing, but understandable due to them being made by Mega Enterprise. I will say it is nice to have the main Metal Slug cast back again, with all the original characters making a return. You will play as one of 4 heroes: Marco Rossi, the main man of Metal Slug, Tarma Roving, Marco's best friend and right-hand man, Ari Kazumoto, the Sergeant of Sparrow, and Fio, my precious Metal Slug waifu, the Sergeant Major of Sparrow. I just want to say these portraits in the character select screen are a bit unnerving, but I'll give them points for having their own style. I'm eventually going to cover all the characters and their backgrounds and the story of all the games in a future video, but for now, I think that covers the basics. The game still looks and plays amazingly, and with the heavy metal influenced soundtrack, it sounds great as well. But this game goes more for style rather than substance. I know that SNK just got back from bankruptcy, but you can't tell me that is why they cut so many features from the game. I think the biggest loss of the game is a lot of the personality and goofiness isn't as prominent as the previous games. There are no more science fiction or fantasy events or enemies like there were in the previous titles, aside from the final boss, which I have to say is a total letdown. Enemies are almost all completely new sprites, and they have, like always, wonderful sprite work. They are fun to fight, but there is something about them I can't quite put my finger on. They take a few more hits to kill than enemies of previous games, and have this weird spongy feeling to them. It doesn't ruin the flow of blowing them away, I just noticed it. Surprisingly, unlike the last game that just threw enemy after enemy at you, and gave you a few moments here and there to gather yourself before fighting more, Metal Slug 5 felt a lot emptier, and there were only a few moments here and there where I fought an actual horde of enemies, like I did in the previous game, which was a lot of the time. I think that is the biggest problem I have with Metal Slug 5, it's just the fact that it feels a bit more barren than it should. Even the new locations just felt weirdly empty, which for a big over-the-top game series such as this is just kinda weird. Bosses were okay, but with this being the 5th entry, they all felt like something we had seen before, and there wasn't really all that much creativity with them. I can't really remember any of the end-level bosses other than the plane, mainly because it introduced the new type of Metal Slug, and the final boss. The final boss, and I'm not really spoiling anything here by sharing what it is a giant demon. The design of it is cool, and it builds mystery in its appearance, but the fight is completely lacking. It has 2 attacks, and for an evil enemy like this, they feel very underwhelming. This is made even worse because this is the final boss we are talking about, and it just flies away. Yep. Once you beat it, the demon is gone and just flies off into the sky. Then we are to reenact the ending of Castle Cagliostro for the credits. The weapon pickups felt very sparse, with most POWs just dropping fruits or bonus points instead. The major times the game gave me another weapon power-up was for certain set-piece segments where it would be helpful. Thankfully though, all the weapons of course are still very fun to use and cause a lot of destruction. There were 3 new Metal Slugs, a mecha which is fun to use if not a bit slow, an airplane that was only used for a single boss battle, battle, but that was again fun to use, and then a weird subway spider thing. This Metal Slug was okay, but I can't really say it's my favorite or I had all that much fun with it. There are a few other reoccurring Metal Slug tanks, and they were fun to use like always when I got my hands on them. The soundtrack rocked, and I really enjoyed running through the stages with the music playing. Guns sounded just as good as they always do, but the menus were really quiet, having no music and barely any sound. After you beat the game, you have the ability to go and choose which stage you want to play, and of course you can co-op the entire game with a friend. There are plenty of little things to see in the menu, but not much more than there was in Metal Slug 4's menus. I like the fact that once you collected an item in game, there was an item viewer screen. Overall, I enjoyed my time with Metal Slug 5. It was the shortest and weakest entry in the series, but there is still a lot of fun to be had here. It's still a charming and colorful run and gun arcade game, and I recommend you give it a play. It's also the shortest out of all the games, only lasting me 35 minutes of playtime, but it was well worth my time. If you can find the combo pack of Metal Slug 4, 5, or Metal Slug Anthology and are interested in playing the games, you need to pick it up. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Next time on the show, I'll be talking about a wonderfully confused horror game. Till next time, this is Thierry Williamson signing off. Bye, guys.
Mission complete!